Right after the July 26 US-China Tianjin meeting, China's Vice Foreign Minister Feng told the media that Communist China presented the U.S. with two action lists. Lifting the sanctions off of the Chinese officials was at the top of the lists. The sanctions on the CCP officials have apparently been very effective.
We not only sanctioned mid-level people,
so it works.
They work, they're real pressure, and they're having real impact, and they need to do more of this.
The most urgent priorities that Communist China urged the U.S. to take included removing visa restrictions of Communist Party members and removing sanctions on Chinese leaders, officials, and government sectors. According to a May 2012 report on DWNews.com, 90% of the direct relatives of Central Committee members have emigrated to America, Europe, and other countries. There were 75,000 to 80,000 direct relatives of retired and incumbent provincial or ministerial officials. Many CCP officials criticize the U.S. in public, but privately they try their best to get their children to live and study abroad in America or Europe. Yang Jiechi made quite a scene with his 17-minute belligerent speech in front of Secretary Blinken at the high-level U.S.-China talk in Alaska. Meanwhile, an online post about his daughter studying at Yale University went viral. On December 4th last year, the Department of State imposed visa restrictions on CCP officials who have engaged in the use or threat of high-tech theft, espionage, sabotage, or malicious interference. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services issued a regulation on October 2nd. It stated that any immigrant who is or has been a member of the Chinese Communist Party or is affiliated with the CCP is inadmissible. Such measures have cut off the money chain and escape route of those powerful and wealthy CCP families. The International Religious Freedom Summit recently ended.
Everyone should be free to believe what they choose. With the support of everyone gathered at this summit, we will maintain America's long-standing leadership on religious freedom.
It was attended by 1,200 officials and 79 organizations from all over the world. The genocide committed by the CCP and the sanctions against the CCP were two popular topics at the summit.
I've met with a number of people over the years, particularly students, who don't even think the Tiananmen Square massacre happened.
And then, as troop lorries were seen moving down the road, there was gunfire from those lorries. After hours of shooting and facing a line of troops, the crowd is still here. They're shouting, "Stop the killing and down with the government."
Because they have been taught nothing but lies and propaganda from the Chinese Communist Party. And we got to let them know, there needs to be a great awakening among the Chinese people about the cruelty of their own government.
The young man in front of me fell dead. I fell over him. 2 others were killed yards away. 2 more people lay wounded on the ground near me.
We have a will to continue to speak out because, as I always said, if we do not speak out against human rights violations in China, indeed anywhere, because of commercial interest, then we lose all moral authority.
Taking on CCP's both domestic and global policies need to be talked about, need to be condemned, need to be pushed back. Domestically, they're becoming increasingly repressive, and globally they're becoming increasingly aggressive. People need to know that China is run by a communist party. The economic policies, disinformation campaign, even the military policies, social policies, foreign policy, everything is run by the Communist Party. Even the Ministry of Propaganda is an arm of the Communist Party. It's not in a cabinet level office.
When the term genocide was created in 1944 to describe the systematic destruction of a people,
there have been genocides that were designated, and obviously what China is doing against all people of faith, whether they be Christians, Falun Gong, Tibetan Buddhists, and now in Xinjiang.
Dr. Turkel believes that sanctions against those bad actors and CCP officials really work.
The sanctions mechanism is critically important in the effort to change the behaviors of the bad actors in the governments. This is the same is true with China, Russia, Iran, everywhere. The naming, shaming taints that person's image in public. That is much more hurtful than actual damage that you can cause to the bank account. Case in point, Carrie Lam, for example. She publicly admitted that she cannot use credit card anymore.
We not only sanctioned mid-level people, we sanctioned him and his family.
The U.S. Treasury Department announced sanctions on 14 Chinese officials. It accused them of participating in the disqualification of 14 opposition members of the Hong Kong Legislative Council on December 7th last year. On March 18th, the U.S. announced the punishment of 24 Chinese officials who undermined Hong Kong's democracy and freedom. On May 12th, Secretary Blinken announced sanctions for Yu Hui. He was the office director of the Chengdu branch of the central leading group of the 610 office. Now defunct, the 610 office was created by Jiang Zemin specifically to persecute Falun Gong. Yu's family is forbidden from entering the United States.
We know for a fact right now that we've seen inside China in the sanctions that just happened in May, as well as the previous sanctions of the U.S. government. You see, that word gets out all across China via this network that Falun Gong practitioners run. And we see two things. We see Falun Gong practitioners sometimes being released early because the police are scared that they're going to wind up on a list that's going to get sanctioned. And we see police officers and other security officials trying to hide what they really do in China. They want to disconnect themselves with agencies and police offices that actually carry out the persecution so that they themselves don't become the target of a sanction. So this stuff really works. It does stay the hand of would-be persecutors in China, and it does in some cases actually get people released. So it's important for the people in the West, particularly our government, to understand that these are not just symbolic gestures. They work, they're real pressure, and they're having real impact, and they need to do more of this.
So it works. And also while we advocating for targeted sanctions, we should not focus about the positive responses that we may be getting from governments like China or Russia, saying, oh, your sanctions are not working. They never ever do that. So it's a waste of time to focus on the effect. But what we can do is to continue to go after those human rights abusers.
If the United States announces sanctions on a certain person or institution, almost all international banks in the world must then check whether they have business dealings with the sanctioned person or institution.